Alright, so today I'm bringing this episode with a little bit of a heavy heart. This is not my favorite kind of episode to make, as it is a bit of a downer, but I do feel this information is very important. I do feel a little moral responsibility to get this in front of you guys and just to make a general awareness of this. And that is, of course, artist exploitation. Now, this is nothing new. This has been happening since the dawn of time, but these are a few more recent examples. These are a few more personal examples, from me, from personal friends, and some from colleagues that I know in the industry. We're going to be talking about intellectual property theft, unpaid internships and art tests, low compensation, and the lack of overall credit and recognition that happens in this industry. If you're new here, I'm Tyler Edlin. I've been an artist and instructor now for close to 15 years. I've worked with big clients, I've worked with small clients, and I'm always trying to be here to help you guys along your creative journey. So with that said, let's get into this and get started. Alright, so first up, let's get into intellectual property theft. And that's actually what inspired this whole video today. Because like a lot of you folks, I got up, I went onto social media, and I saw this bit of information kind of trending around in my circles. And that's Isaac Yerim Kim, who's a senior kind of concept artist. I think I was friends with him on Facebook. I don't really know him personally, though. I've never spoke or interacted with him. But apparently he did this piece on the right, way back almost 10 years ago in 2015. And he kind of watched the new Planet of the Apes movies, and he saw one of the final scenes, spoiler alert, that basically kind of ripped off his art. Now he's saying he didn't kind of get credit, anything like that, but I mean, it is immensely similar, as we can kind of see here up on screen, in terms of what kind of went down. Now, of course, this is flipped, so the similarities can be even pushed further if we were to actually rotate and flip that final credit scene even more. The composition is basically identical. It's got the same kind of color scheme, right? Same lighting, and overall kind of character setup. So he's pretty upset. He's disappointed with that. He actually made this statement on socials himself. I just watched Kingdom Planet of the Apes. He thought it was a fun film. I thought it looked great too. I didn't get around to seeing it, but I did enjoy the previous two. But it left him with a real bad taste in his mouth, as it should, because after admiring all the work that had went into that, and him being a huge fan of the series itself, he basically saw his image just getting ripped off in the film, one for one. Now, it's kind of really hard in these circumstances, from my experience, to put the blame onto one person, as this is it's a production, right? So it is a massive team, and there is a chain of artists, of supervisors, of art directors. This has to go through a number of stages to kind of ever see the light of day on things. So if it's going to get by one, it's getting by a lot of people. And of course, when a lot of folks saw this movie, friends that know the work, friends of the artists here, they all knew. How did it get by so many artists on a production team and not get picked up at all? That's what's super fishy to me. And I get it if you're just the art director and maybe you have the final say on a shot design like this, but you're not aware of this artist. I'd never seen this art before, even though I was quasi-aware of the artist. I know when I have worked on some bigger productions, there was entire legal departments dedicated to catching things like this. Just slips, no, because nobody wants to get sued at the end of the day. And that is exactly kind of what's I saw happening here in one of the comments on the original post of this. Alan Batano, again, someone I don't personally know, but apparently we have 3 mutuals. He was giving a whole bunch of advice. Now, he seems fairly credible, right? He's worked at Warner Brothers. He's a production designer, or formerly at Nickelodeon. He was an art director at Disney, and of course he's worked in various special effects studios, right? And he says if you get your original PSD, which will have all the kind of metadata kind of locked in, you can go, right, get this all okayed by the copyright office, so they can basically get your information set in stone, right? Get your physical certificate of copy. And then he basically says to go through, get a lawyer, and basically start to take action. He even recommends getting attorney John Cantor. So it seems like him being in this field, he kind of probably sees this, I'm guessing, a lot. So yeah, I feel bad for artists, of course, like Isaac Kim, who's basically, getting exploited like this. Because I would feel powerless, in circumstances like this. Like, what could I possibly do? And just a month ago, in June, this happened again. There was some kind of Indian movie, Kalki 2898. I've never heard of this stuff. But apparently Sung Choy, who's an artist I was well aware of, his artwork is basically getting blatantly ripped off and appearing in other kind of movies and in trailers. This is happening all the time. It's just a matter of like who's getting caught. Kind of like Adobe, right? Adobe got caught recently and they had to backpedal on a lot of stuff they were doing. Everyone's getting in trouble. But yeah, like again, another unfortunate situation. I don't have any updates. I'm not sure what Sung Choi did. I don't know if he pursued anything about it. Again, this is a film from India. Maybe they didn't think anyone would notice. But who knows? If you guys know any information about this, of course, let me know in the comments below. But there is just so many similar traits. This, it looks like it's ripped off one for one. Like they shamelessly, like, copy and pasted his art into the final bit of the movie. At least in the prior example, it seems like they built it all from scratch, just kind of copying all the components of the picture. Again, very shamelessly, but this is even more shameless. When are people going to stop redefining what that new low is? But yeah, it does seem like it's very difficult for artists and very small creatives to pursue legal action in these departments. So hopefully some justice will be served here. Now, the second topic I wanted to kind of go over today is it's going to be a brief thing, but low compensation, because this is a bit personal. This happened to me earlier in June. I'm not going to get specific, of course, because that would get me in trouble, but a big, well-known studio approached me. One that I've even worked for in the past. And get this, they wanted me to do similar work, almost identical kind of work that I've done for them in the past. And they wanted to pay me like a fraction of the wage. It was like ridiculous. I was completely dumbstruck like when I saw this. It was disrespectful to me. It wasted my time. I had to spend like a week negotiating and going back with them to try to raise that money a bit. And this is like for a world-class IP. I know their pockets are friggin' lined. I get it, it's a reception. Everyone's struggling, but like, geez here. And this has been happening in the creative field, of course, forever too. This happened a lot with, even like what artists like Pete Moorbarker would say out against Magic the Gathering, back in the day. Like, you get paid X amount of work. Let's say it's like 1,000, 1,500 for like a Magic card. You get that one-time fee, and then they're just going to reuse it indefinitely, reprint it indefinitely, right? They're going to stick it on marketing. They're going to make a digital distribution of that, right? They're going to keep reusing your art that they're paying you, the artist, one time for, Wizards of the Coast is, and you never get compensation for that. I believe he did speak out about that back in the day, or at least that's why he kind of quit. At least he got everyone's radar on Wizards for that. And maybe they're a little bit better about it nowadays. But I mean, this is a thing that happens. It's like these big studios, these big companies, they kind of just want to run over us artists, with the steamroller. They don't give a damn. They never cared about us. So it's a thing we got to keep an eye on. What are the comparisons compared to the overall profit that this work is going to? And should, of course, there be any royalties paid, and should there be royalties involved? Like, I love... If I'm going to work for like a smaller independent or like, like an indie kind of studio or a one-person team, I have no problem like dropping my prices. Of course, I'm not going to charge them the same thing that I would a big studio, but like then we could talk and about royalty sharing and maybe profit sharing on some of what might potentially be gained from there. And again, the trade-off is I'll do the work for much cheaper than I would for somebody else. So it's always about compromise in these sorts of situations. All I'm saying here, artists, is know your worth. Don't make it a race to the bottom where we have to constantly outbid or bottom bid each other to make it so we just keep dropping the standards and we're lowering these kinds of wages. This kind of thing, of course, happens with like Fiverr and any kind of Outwork sort of service that you might see on the internet, right? Like they'll just, hey, I got this job. They put it out there, who's interested, and then all the artists kind of, respond. They let their wages know. And I get emails like this too, right? Where where there's like a job contract coming through and they're emailing like 20, maybe 30 different artists because they like your work. That's why you're getting the email. But they don't care beyond that what's going to happen. They're going to just take or respond to the email for when they're asking you about your day rate or what it's going to cost to do this job. They'll go with the cheapest offer. I know I constantly lose out on bids because people are just going in way lower than me. I'm kind of fine with that. But again, it's just something to be aware of that happens. So let's get on to number 3 today, which is unpaid art tests and internships. I hugely disagree with both because I've seen exploitation across the board in this regard. Now, if you don't know, you could take an art test occasionally before a gig. They see if you're a good fit for the role. And I have seen good instances of this where something came from that. I've had former students take art tests for like bigger, studios in which they've basically started their career from because they did well in these art tests. A lot of the times it's like they'll give you a very specific assignment with a time frame just to at least validate that you are who you say you are and your skills match your current portfolios. It seems kind of harmless except for when it's not, right? Because I've also had former students that have taken longer form art tests, where they basically give you multiple rounds of them. Think of like kind of going through multiple rounds in interviews, right? Like I've known students that have gone through multiple rounds of art tests where these clients are demanding them, just to keep producing work and more work. Oh, tweak this, iterate on this. And these students have little professional experience, of course, so they want to take anything they can get, and they don't know necessarily, at least on the onset, that they're getting exploited. Because that's what's happening. A lot of the times, these so-and-so clients, especially if they're an unknown, we're just a startup, they might tell you, and are like, we don't have a budget to kind of, we don't have the budget to kind of sort out this part here, so we're going to run it through an art test. Like, they might make up a whole freaking story if that gets you to do some work for them. And that's what they're doing, right? They don't want to pay you. They're going to have you do a number of concepts, take your idea, and run out the door. Oh, it didn't work out. Oh, your work's okay, but we're going in another direction. They're going to give you the same runaround. Of course, they're going to have you sign all these papers, NDAs, and forms even before you do the art test, saying that they own your art test and that they're going to use it. And maybe they'll even, in worst cases nowadays, right, they might have you do a bunch of art for them for free. Then they'll plug it into like some AI data set and then just get it to regurgitate your work and build a whole style sheet and kind of run with it. You're never going to get a dime. Right, but you signed over all your rights to it because you felt that was part of the process as they explained it to you. Right, so artists are getting exploited in this industry left and right when it comes to this. I got a simple little rule that says I don't do art tests, and I'm not certainly going to do an unpaid internship. Now, you have to take that with a grain of salt and at your own discretion. If you're doing one for a studio, hopefully that's well known, that has an existing reputation, of course, that situation's entirely different. And if you have nothing else going on, absolutely do it. But don't do unpaid work of any kind for some unknown employer. That's my hardline rule. And then for my last topic today, right, is the lack of credit and recognition. I do see this appear in smaller pockets throughout the industry and field, and in ways I never thought I would. Like, I've worked for big clients. I've outsourced and subcontracted that work to other artists to kind of help me with it. Sometimes they might call this ghost painting, ghost writing in the writing field. This does happen all the time. Again, when an established artist hires someone else to help them with the work, maybe they're just keeping up with it. But again, in worst cases, they're just not credited at all. Sometimes there might be a legal situation with this. Like if a studio hired, essentially me to do it, and maybe I couldn't even say something up front about getting extra help on the side with it, and maybe the company publishes something about that work and they just slap my name on it. Maybe that would happen. I don't think it has happened yet to me personally, but that could be a scenario where it did. Most of the time, of course, I have my own morals about this. If I'm going to post work that I collaborated on or hired someone else to do, I'm going to credit them and make sure they're fully linked to that work. I want to help and bolster their careers, because this is what happens when someone in my position or in a similar position wouldn't do, because I have seen this where students have come to me where they were getting subcontracted through other bigger name artists to do work for them for clients, and they're not getting credited. They're just kind of getting reposted their work on, ArtStation accounts and stuff underneath the guy's name or the banner or the studio's name, and you would never know that these other people were helping do all this other work, in that name. So this does happen. Artists are just not getting credited, and now it's a thing where people in any kind of place of power have to have a good moral compass and take responsibility so that they're not stunting the creative careers of these young budding talents. Because that's what happens if someone, a big fish is going to come and eat up the little fish and bolster them up, getting all this work and credit. It's hard for them to make connections. It's hard to get their name onto things. Now, of course, there are scenarios, like I said, where there might be a legal contract in place where that would be very difficult. But again, I would say you gotta just, when you can, either just use a studio name or a studio banner, because that's the best kind of way to kind of get around any issue. That way, if you're hiring an artist or if you're working for someone, you're doing it for the studio, and the studio's name is on the contract. The studio's name is credited for the work, right? Everyone is under that umbrella, is covered. And I just wanted to make you guys aware that if you are a younger talent, or if you're a little less inexperienced, if you're working for either an artist or a small to mid-sized studio, maybe just ask them if the work ever goes public, how would that be displayed, and if it would be able to get linked back to them in any sort of way. I just think transparency with this thing is always the best case, and whoever does work should get credited for it, of course. With that said, folks, this was my rant on artists getting exploited. Let me know down below if you guys have any stories that you'd like to add in, or if you have any updated bits of information, anything I talked about today. I'd love to hear from you. Of course, I'll catch you guys in the next video, and I have links below for everything you might need. Later.